Recently, while editing my video on Soviet ammunition, which you should watch if you haven't, I noticed something interesting in old Soviet artillery footage. On many anti-tank guns, trucks, and artillery, the Soviets tied infantry rifles to the barrel. That really caught my attention since I had no idea. Why did they do that? They used Mosin Nagant rifles with only iron sights, no telescopic sights or other attachments. If it was for aiming, they couldn't do it. They're too far from the shooting positions to use the iron sights. And also, look closely, that soldier is hammering the bolt. Why? Is he going to use the rifle on the anti-tank cannon? It doesn't make much sense. I searched the internet for answers, but hardly anyone agreed on what was happening. And many just said that it was simply a curious way of aiming. But just by staying up late to do some thorough research, I found the curious answer to this strange practice. It wasn't an isolated incident, it was actually common and usually had a reason. And in this video, we'll talk about that curious way of trying to overcome the limitations of the Soviet Army in World War I. So you'd better get comfortable and welcome to Guns Club. First, let's thoroughly analyze the image. Clearly, it's an M1942 Commonwealth of Independent States, 3 cannon of 76.2 millimeters, an iconic cannon in the Soviet Union. It was made in the late 30s because German propaganda claimed to have powerful tanks with strong armor. The Soviets took the lead in developing higher caliber anti-tank cannons. They went from manufacturing 45 millimeter cannons to manufacturing 76.2 millimeter cannons. When the German invasion began, they realized most German tank armor wasn't very strong and could be penetrated by heavy SHK machine guns. During the conflict's middle stages, especially the Commonwealth of Independent States, 3 cannons, they were highly effective against the later heavy tanks. If we look closely, the rifle wasn't placed to aim with the iron sights. Artillery fires indirectly over kilometers, so rifle iron sights aren't useful. But could we say that they used these rifles on these field guns to use the cannon as an anti-tank gun? In that case, fire directly. That's a good assumption, but let's also look at this. This is what the sight of a Mosin Nagant looks like in first person. In video games, they usually make the sights really big for practical purposes, but in real life, iron sights were actually very limited. When it comes to visibility, the most notable case of closed iron sights is the M1 Garand, which even received a lot of criticism from its users. The front sight is barely visible and hard to see. If aiming with an iron sight looks like this when it's right in front of your face, I can't imagine what it would be like to aim with the sights so far away from you. It's just not viable. But let's look at this photo. The soldier is clearly cocking the rifle, and also the fact that the rifle is locked back, as if trying to contain the recoil, gives us an important clue. That means the rifle was meant to be fired over the barrel, so this rifle could be used for aiming. But not with the iron sights, but with a tracer. This wasn't the first or last time something like this was used. We saw it with the recoilless rifle, M40 106mm United States Army. It's equipped with an overlaid .50 caliber semi-automatic rifle, which they called a spotting rifle. Its name suited it because it fired a special .50 caliber round with ballistics like an anti-tank projectile. The spotting rifle's projectile allowed you to determine the distance and lead on a moving target before firing the main round. Many who analyzed the images concluded that a tracer round was fired and hit the target. There you could fire higher caliber rounds with the main gun, however, this would also be incorrect. Where is the rifle being held? If the gun is fired in that position, the rifle would hit the hydraulic recoil system and would be destroyed immediately. Except for the first shot, it would warn enemies of an impending artillery barrage, losing surprise. Also, for long-range shots, how would the gunners know where the tracer hit? It simply wouldn't be possible, so it wasn't meant to aim the cannon that way either. The real reason for this was simple. If you've played Call of Duty 2, you probably remember this scene. That's enough, comrades. Come here and grab a grenade. These are potatoes, Comrade Commissar. Why are we using potatoes instead of real grenades? Because real grenades are valuable. In fact, they're worth much more than you. Sorry for the mistake, Comrade Commissar. And now I threw a potato at each of those areas. Target. When Germany invaded in 1941, the Soviet army struggled and the economy was weak. And if you watched our last video, you'll know that ammunition prices weren't so easily affordable for the Soviets. During the conflict, 103,000 M1942 cannons were manufactured. Can you imagine how much ammunition they would use just training the operators of those cannons? At the very least, they would have to fire about 20 or 40 rounds to master the shot. That's really a lot of ammunition, which is not the same as firing a rifle cartridge. It's significantly more expensive to operate those cannons than regular infantry weapons. If the Soviets had used up all that ammunition in training, by the time they went to fight, they wouldn't have any left. Likewise, the instructors at Soviet gunnery schools, instead of spending expensive ammunition to teach aspiring gunners, invented this clever way to at least save ammunition during aiming lessons. This curious technique was used during practice for direct fire and hitting moving targets. They would tie the rifle in this way to logs, and the students had to aim the barrel in the traditional manner. Then, if you look closely, a wire was tied to the trigger of the Mosin Nagant. Once ready, the apprentice gunner would pull the wire and the rifle would fire a tracer round at the target. This was practical, ingenious, and low-cost, ideal for an army in total war. If you have served your nation or are a soldier, you know that this is nothing new or too radical. It's basically a rudimentary simulator. Training troops to operate equipment such as cannons, naval vessels, helicopters, and airplanes has always been expensive. That's why armies around the world have long required simulators or practice equipment to train their cadets. A good example of this is the Pistola de Utilidad para Simulación, 7, or training shooting device, by its initials in Spanish. It appears to be a normal rocket-propelled grenade, but on closer inspection, there's a hole in the ammo. This ammunition is for rocket-propelled grenade training. Instead of a rocket, it fires a tracer projectile. The shot has the same recoil and closely simulates firing a rocket-propelled grenade. Users in the Soviet Union and modern Russia must initially use these cartridges to fire these weapons. After mastering them, they can use real rockets. This way, they save ammo and avoid giving a dangerous explosive to an inexperienced cadet. What do you think? Only the most knowledgeable know about this gadget. It's a self-loading insert cannon 2x35. They're inserted into tank cannons so that gunners can learn how to fire the tank without the need for expensive high-caliber ammunition. The trigger is electric and allows for a single shot. In conclusion, the next time you see a photo like this, don't be surprised by what's happening. They're just Soviet soldiers saving a bit of money for their nation. Have you ever wondered why Allied soldiers didn't use camouflage in Europe during World War I? Well, click on the video in the center to find out. Thank you so much for watching this video, and goodbye.